Welcome to Truest Blood, the official True Blood podcast.
I'm Kristin Bauer.
And I'm Deborah Ann Wool.
And you've been invited in.
I want to do bad things with you. On Truest Blood.
Welcome back to Truest Blood, where we sink our fangs into the series episode by episode.
Episode 103. So good. It's called Mine. It's written by Alan Ball and directed by John Dahl.
This episode was all about sex and magic. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means in the True Blood world.
Means a lot in this world. And vampire politics. We're finding out a lot about this world, the hierarchy and the structure. It's fascinating.
Yes, and speaking of structure and magic together, we are also going to be interviewing Nathan Barr and Gary Calamar, who were in charge of the score and the soundtrack, respectively, for the show. So they've got a lot of really interesting things to say.
Yeah, they really informed us how to feel about every moment.
Yes. But first, this week on True Blood. Hoping to speak to Bill alone, Sookie is disturbed to instead find him entertaining a cadre of big, strong, nasty vamps. Things go south in the Compton parlor in more ways than one. And to protect Sookie, Bill stakes his claim by declaring,
Stop! Sookie is mine.
While this gets the trio to back down, tensions remain high, and Sookie is left with some serious doubts about dating the undead.
Dawn and Jason are back at it, but all these sexy vampires in town are causing Jason a bit of an identity crisis as town stud. This prevents him from, performing as said stud. He deflects his problems onto Dawn, who then chases him out with some choice words and a few well-placed bullets.
You are obnoxious and full of yourself and dumber than a box of hair. And now you can't even get it up? There's no reason why I should be seeing you anymore.
Tara and Sam also discuss their sex lives, or lack thereof, and find the solution with one another. Unfortunately for Tara, the next morning she finds her mother drunk and belligerent and full of venom for her daughter.
You the devil child. You ain't no child of mine.
Tara crashes at Lafayette's to discover he's got quite a few businesses going on in Bon Ton, one of which involves the intimate servicing of local politicians. Another is dealing V to the likes of Jason, who will do anything to get his morning glory back.
Hey, you said all I had to do was dance.
Okay, dance.
Was thinking.
Ooh, lover, you gonna make me clutch my pearls.
Later, Sookie's mind and libido are still battling out whether to pursue a relationship with Bill when Sam calls and asks her to go check on Dawn, who didn't come into work today. She does, only to find Dawn had good reason for skipping work. She was dead. So let's start with sex.
Let's start with the sex, because there's a lot of sex going on this episode, which is, saying something for True Blood.
Right.
But it's interesting because the sex this episode, as far as I can tell, seems mostly sort of transactional. We start with... we start with Jason and Dawn, and Jason, his whole identity is as this, cock of the walk,
yes,
Bon Ton stud, right? And it's interesting because I think about his life, and probably that's, he's not that smart, not that,
right,
doesn't have that much
as a
to
box
offer,
of hair,
as to quote Dawn.
That I love that. Obnoxious, full of yourself. Dumb as a box of hair.
And now you can't even get it up. What good are you for? Yes. Great. But how true that is, and how much Jason must feel that even as a horn dog, and we might want to judge him for it, and probably should, I think he spent his whole life with that's all he's ever had. And it's all the men in Bon Ton have ever looked up to him for.
Right.
And now vampires come into town, and that's for the first time being threatened, and he's having to deal with insecurity.
Yes.
So the fact that he role plays as a vampire and then shames the fang banger, in his word, it's so exposing of him, I think.
It is so exposing of him and sends him on quite a journey we're going to see when he goes to see Lafayette. Mm-hmm. I love how he asked for Viagra and Lafayette's response is no.
It's legal. You can get it at a pharmacy.
I did. Oh, and he calls him puppy dog.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
That was probably another improvisational moment.
I'm sure that it was. I'm almost positive that it was.
Yes.
And then Jason's there, and again, another transactional sexual relationship where he's going to perform for Lafayette's website in order to afford the V that's going to give him back his manhood.
And is that a Laura Bush mask, did they say?
I think it might be.
Later, Tara says, I can't believe I just saw. Did I just see that?
We'll have to see. I think, it's so funny. And again, I watch that scene and I go, how fucking fearless is Ryan Kwanten? I mean, I know he's fit and, there's maybe some confidence that comes with that. But gosh, I mean, to stand there in his tighty whities and dance. I don't know a lot of people that have the guts for that,
I do not.
Whew.
Yeah, no.
And then on top of that, to be as talented as he is, I think that's really, you get the gold mine there. He's fearless. He's talented. So yeah, can't ask for more from an actor.
He's so sweet. And he's so funny. He's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, then I think, luckily Dawn sees through all of Jason's bullshit. And we've been talking about that fantastic line of hers as well. She comes out and she says, just because you've lost your heart on doesn't mean you have to have a breakdown. Believe it or not, Jason, the world doesn't revolve around your dick.
That is the most perfect line, isn't it? In her dialogue, she just slays Jason and tells us all about him.
Yeah, she pins him down, to a dime. It's so impressive and says all of the things that I think we're all thinking. And potentially helps him start this journey of maybe over 7 long seasons.
The poor guy.
Finding something more.
And Lynn Collins, throwing it out to that actress who plays Dawn. She is so beautiful and so talented and so fearless. She's amazing and so funny.
Yep. She's fantastic with all that. And then, so then we have Lafayette, who has a literal transactional relationship. He is being paid by a state senator to service him.
Another great line on that, right?
Yes.
Right. We both wrote down where she's like, so you're a prostitute? And he says, I'm an entrepreneur.
Which he is. And he makes that point that he's, working as a short order cook. He's working on the road crew. These are not things that are going to get him out of Bon Temps. So he is also dealing drugs as well as prostituting himself. He goes, look, I have this body. Yeah. Someone else could make money off of it, or I could.
Brilliant.
So you have to give him credit for really owning himself and getting what he needs.
Yes, I love that line too.
Yeah. So finally, we have Sam and Tara, who are also flirting around this idea. And it's interesting because in the commentary, Alan mentions that they actually weren't quite sure what to do with Sam and Tara this season. Now, Sam, has some stuff coming up. And I'm sure that some of that is because their stories are not as prominent in the book, so they didn't have the same guideline. Yeah. So he said we just kind of threw them together, thought, why don't they sleep together? Because they weren't quite sure what to do with them. Yeah. And what a happy accident, because it is such a sort of heartbreaking and heartwarming scene at the same time.
I know.
Sam, I'd love to throw to that moment where Tara asks Sam,
"Are you lonely?"
Are you lonely?
Yes. I am very, very lonely.
And I think Tara is too. She and Sam are very similar. They both care so much for the people in their lives.
Yes.
And no one is really caring for them.
And they're both pining
Yeah.
over a stack house and can't have
over a
them.
stack house.
And don't want to be vulnerable enough to go for it.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, it's a transactional sexual relationship because they make this deal that they're not going to let it affect their work. But I love it because it's actually a promise to spend a little time letting someone else care for them and treat them kindly, and letting that be each other. And even if it isn't true love, in fact, in many ways, I think they're too similar for it to be a lasting relationship.
Right.
But they both need something, and they're both capable of giving it to each other in that moment. And yeah, it's really quite lovely.
It is quite lovely, and it's so well acted.
Yeah.
Right, because you see how they both just play with the idea and go for it, and then when Sam finally says, "Okay," she goes, "Yeah." Her response, "Yeah."
I even like when she's sitting outside, and obviously Tara gets the idea first.
Yeah,
and he goes inside. Rutina does this wonderful thing where she takes the clip out of her hair, takes her hair down.
Great.
It's so simple and lovely, and it telegraphs what she's thinking without being too obvious.
Yes.
And it just shows that moment of Tara going, I need this. I'm going to ask for what I need. And she steps in and asks. It's again, I'm consistently impressed by Rutina.
I know, me too. I know it's whoever's on screen, Sam Trammell, right? Whoever's on screen, I'm like, I'm so impressed. And him and her, I think there's 4 or 5 actors I've ever seen who you can't catch them acting at all. Like Meryl Streep, we know she's acting. She's brilliant. She's the best. But I still do know she's acting. But like John Wayne, he's just seems to be there. Patricia Arquette is one and it's a random list, my list of people who I can't catch acting. And Sam Trammell is one of those people.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's a fourth, Spencer Tracy. Right? So it's Sam Trammell, John Wayne, Patricia Arquette, and Spencer Tracy.
Boy, good company, Sam.
Right? He really just so truthful in the moment.
Yes. There's something, he's never pushing too hard. He's never telegraphing too much. He has a favorite line of mine this episode as well, where, they're all upset that Marthaville's got a Starbucks, especially him. He goes, oh, no, am I going to have to get a cappuccino machine? And he has this great line about vampires.
You know what I really wish would come to Marthaville? Huh? Buffy. A Blade. Or any one of those badass vampire killers who take care of Mr. Bill Compton. That's what I wish.
That is such a great... Isn't that the writer being funny and crossing over to reality?
Right. It places us in this world with just these key differences, which is that vampires are real.
Yes. Yes.
Well, shall we move on to the magic?
Yeah, it crosses over with the sex because there's, Sookie the virgin is changing.
Yes. So there's no sex for Bill and Sookie this episode, but quite a lot of lead up.
Yeah.
I think Sookie spends the episode questioning her choices, and potentially because there's still some of Bill's blood in her system, she said spends quite a bit of it fantasizing and masturbating as well.
I know. I was hoping you'd say the M word.
Well, it's just quite a bit of it, so I don't think we can tiptoe around it.
We really cannot tiptoe around the masturbating. Yeah, no. I know. And there's so much. Where do we start, Deb? Because 5 of my favorite lines are
I know.
This.
Well, we start from the beginning, I think, which is, after this harrowing experience with the vamps at Bill's house, he meets her out front of Grand's. And she keeps digging into, there's even this wonderful little sound cue. Maybe we'll throw to it because it'll be something Nathan did.
Yeah.
Why can't I hear your thoughts? Do you even have any thoughts?
Oh, I have thoughts.
So it's the music where she starts to try to listen to his thoughts and then gets nothing. And he does this great little jarring effect to come out of that. And it's interesting because she covets that silence, right? That's part of why he's attractive to her.
Yes.
But she spends the whole episode talking about how it also scares her.
Yes.
She can't know. And she's so used to knowing.
She can't know.
Yeah. So she's asking him all of these questions about what makes him tick. How does his body work? Like she's trying to find a sign. She's trying to Scully.
She's trying to Scully. Why can't I hear you? Well, wait a minute. You
Right.
don't breathe. Well, then how do you exist?
Why can't I hear your thoughts?
Perhaps it's because I don't have brainwaves.
Why not?
Because I'm dead.
No, you're not. You're standing here, talking to me.
I have no heartbeat. I have no need to breathe. There are no electrical impulses in my body. What animates you no longer animates me.
What does animate you, then? Blood? How do you digest it if nothing works?
Magic?
Oh, come on, Bill. I may look naive, but I'm not. And you need to remember that.
You think that it's not magic that keeps you alive? Just because you understand the mechanics of how something works doesn't make it any less of a miracle. Which is just another word for magic. We're all kept alive by magic, Sucky. My magic's just a little different from yours, that's all.
Oh my God, I'm crying. I'm literally
It's
starting
so
to cry.
lovely.
Like, that is so true
It's true.
and beautiful. It takes us out again, right back to reality. Like we're watching a crazy vampire show, and then all of a sudden, Alan Ball reaches out of the screen and grabs me by the throat, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's magic. Life is magic.
Well, and even for someone like myself, who's, more of a skeptic, more of a science, focused person, I see that and I go, that rings true for me just as much as it does for you.
Wow.
Because yes, I love anatomy and the incredible miracle that is how our bodies work.
Yeah.
But at the end, that little spark of life, whatever that is, we have no explanation for.
We don't.
And so we all end up in the same place, which is just being in awe of life.
Yes. And when you fall in love, that really does happen. Like Gran says, because she says, Suki says something like, my mind is telling me to, not hang out with this guy. And
Right. Well, then she wants to say, I'm battling between my mind and like my libido or
Yeah.
something. But Gran goes, heart. And I think Suki's like, sure.
Yeah.
We'll go with that word.
That's so true. She kind of cuts her off. Heart?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Gran is full of all kinds of words of wisdom, this ep. Again, you and I pulled the same one if you want to introduce it.
Yes. It's kind of surrounded by this humor about Starbucks. This it's the big thing because Sam mentioned it and now Suki mentioned it to Gran, and
It's in the newspaper.
it's in the newspaper. And then Gran says,
I just think there is a purpose for everything that God creates. Whether it's a unique ability or a cup of overpriced coffee with too much milk or a vampire. God will reveal that purpose when the time is right.
and there's again Alan Ball reaching into my living room. God will reveal that purpose in time. So much of life is unknowable, most of it.
Yeah.
In the first world, I think we really forget that. And whatever our spiritual beliefs are, whatever we call God, that sort of faith that God will reveal the purpose in time just brings me to my knees.
Yeah. It goes back to what I think we spoke about with Charlene in episode 1, which is this idea that she's separating vampires from the unholy.
Yes.
That vampires are just as much created by whatever it is that you believe as anything else. And it's just a lovely, open-hearted way to look at life.
Yeah. Truly magic.
So there's something fascinating too, something magical in even just the way their love is depicted. Her fantasies, just like when she met Bill, live in this very romance novel.
Very much.
The music, the lights, the costume.
Yes.
and maybe some of that is speaking to Sookie's naivete about men and sex.
Right.
But I think it is also this heightened, the way we feel when we're young and in love, especially the first time.
Yes.
That there are these places in our lives where you just have a glance with someone and in your mind you create an entire relationship with them.
Yes.
That never comes to pass.
Right.
But, in this case, perhaps it will.
And I had a little side note about movie magic.
Yeah.
Because it's endlessly, to me, magical when we're on the set, what we do and what everyone does. So that house, when we see that exterior of Grant's house, it never ceases to amaze me that they built that house.
Right.
And then I said to my husband, the outside and the front hall. So when Sookie walks up to the Compton house, another house they built, and she walks up, it would be shot at Greer during the day.
Well, I'm jump in actually.
Yeah.
The exterior of Compton House was not built till later. So actually that scene of her touching herself on Bill's stoop is in Louisiana.
Okay. And then they
you'll
matched
notice
it.
Well, sort of. You'll notice as you keep watching, especially in the upcoming seasons, you'll see the stoop looks a little different.
It does.
Than it does there.
Interesting.
But you'll notice, because you're not wrong, Kristin, that also we've got writer's strike is right after this episode.
Oh, right.
So this episode is Louisiana weeks before. It's LA during shooting, and it's months later after the writer's strike. So you're going to watch closely. You'll see Sookie's hair change when she's on the porch. She's got one type of hair. When you see her from the inside looking through the window, her hair's a little different. In the scene with Gran, I think because Lois had a job. She was on stage working on a play, and so they had to bring her back later.
Bangs were different in the middle. Okay.
Yep. So you'll find little inconsistencies there, which again, I urge people, don't look at that as a mistake or a goof.
Right.
This is evidence of what it takes to make a show like this.
Yes.
It's actually more interesting than a goof.
They work so hard on continuity.
So hard.
Staggering.
So this is just a way to see how hard everyone is working.
And what's so interesting about talking to Gary and Nathan is this episode, I worked my balls off. I have no more balls. Trying to really focus on the music. Really focus. And I would keep almost becoming hypnotized and then be so into the show and then go, oh, damn it. And I would stop and rewind to watch just the music. It's so seamlessly done.
Right.
That it's almost impossible to take it apart, but it is informing us to such an enormous degree. And how they do that together is so interesting. I can't wait to hear how the heck this happens.
Right.
There's specific tones for the Sookie Bill romance.
Yep.
Right? It's really fascinating when they use a song, it really informs us. It creates that magic layer to the audience.
Yeah, it definitely is its own layer of magic consistently running, especially since Nathan is live scoring as he himself feels it as an audience member. So he is simultaneously helping you understand what the emotional content is at any moment while he's feeling it based on what he's seeing.
Interesting. So interesting how much hard work creates magic in quotes, right?
Exactly.
And now for a quick bite. Did you catch that?
This episode, we catch a glimpse into two of our residents' ice boxes. Jason Stackhouse is all stocked up in beer and plenty of Ready Whip. Wonder what he needs that for.
And local entrepreneur Lafayette keeps things classy in his mini fridge with Pellegrino, plenty of V, and a single serving of cherry jello.
This has been the Fridges of Bontemps County. So this episode, we start to meet some more vampires. Bill is not the only vampire in Bon Temps. So we start to learn a little bit more about vampire society and their politics, and there's a whole system, a whole hierarchy at play.
Yes.
This is, and a wide range of ideologies, right? Like just because you're a vampire doesn't mean you agree with Nan Flanagan and the Authority and all of their plans for coming out of the coffin.
That opens up a whole new world. It's the first time, is it the first time we hear about Eric?
Yep.
Right?
So they mentioned a Sheriff Eric as a power.
How great is that
Sheriff. But Malcolm, the sort of elder vampire of this nest, doesn't seem that intimidated by that idea.
No.
So then they mention a very mysterious her, which book readers and probably are correct to assume it might be an early nod to Sophie Ann because she is in the book.
Yes.
But I also wonder about Nan Flanagan, right?
Yes.
So Nan is leading this charge of toe the party line, as Malcolm would say. And, she's also someone who could potentially, come down on a vampire who is not playing by the rules.
Yeah, and we're going to see both of them, coming up. And, this Mr. Mainstream, Bill.
Yo, Mr. Mainstream.
He was so cool from the Merlotte's perspective, right? Like this cool vampire walks. I mean, he couldn't be cooler. And then all of a sudden, he's like,
we realize he's kind of lame.
He's kind of lame
per these other vampires,
Right.
Yeah, it's so
he's
funny.
Square.
He's super square. Exactly.
He's super square.
When he talks about this, this difference that vampires that live in nests become crueler because they're more in touch with this sort of primitive, bestial instinct, and vampires that are loners like himself hold on to more of their humanity.
Yeah.
But Bill seems sad and broody all the time.
Yeah.
And Diane and Malcolm, and I'm forgetting the other vampire's name right
Me
now,
too,
but they seem like they're having a ton of fun.
They're having the time of their lives. Oh,
but they are also scary. Go ahead.
But they're terrifying. I love the plastic couch.
Oh my God.
Right.
And the big, the tumblers of blood that they're drinking is very cheeky.
And we're going to be delving into that next.
Yes, we'll get into blood.
Right. We're getting into blood. We're going to get into these set designs, how amazing they are. We also see Hep D.
Right. For the first time mentioned.
Right. We haven't seen that. I'm not sure we heard the term breather before.
Yeah. That vampires have their own.
Right. They've got their own slang
for us. Yeah.
This is a whole world now.
Yeah. Well, and then it's interesting too. So there are these other rules, like the Bill claiming Sookie. Sookie is mine, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny to me that these lawless vamps who don't toe the party line and think he's, why are they so respectful of this claiming of Sookie? Because we don't hear that there's any magic involved. It's just sort of vampire code, which they abide by.
That's funny.
It's interesting. So I'm really curious, what are these different party lines maybe that vampires follow? Because, we're going to find out later that there's the Magister. So there are consequences within the vampire community separate from human politics and those consequences.
Yes.
So perhaps this idea of if you were to go against a vampire's claim, there might be consequences for that within the vampire world.
Right, because he established that they're older and stronger than he is.
Yep. So why do they respect him?
It's interesting. Yeah. It's sort of like prison rules or feral cat colony, that there is some sort of structure, even though it doesn't look like it.
Right.
Yeah. I found that really opened up our world, and the Mr. Mainstream really made both of us laugh.
Well, it's going to be great because when we finally get to Jessica coming in, Jessica finds Bill really lame. She thinks he has all this power and all this fun that he could have, and he's not taking advantage of it. And, it is fun to see how the show switches our perspective of characters depending on who is around them.
Yes.
Because you could also really admire Bill for, trying to coexist and make the best of it. But then, Diane, that's the name there, Diane.
Oh yeah, Diane.
She accuses him of denying who he is.
Yeah.
That he used to be fun, and that not everyone, I think, as she says, wants to dress up and play human.
Yes.
Which is a valid point, I think, as well.
I guess that once we meet Eric, which I'm really, of course, drawn to skipping ahead, and I'll try not to, but like he is the bad boy.
Yeah.
Right?
He's the foil to Bill's mainstreamer. Yeah.
He is. A little Starsky and Hutch going on there. I don't know why I said that. But it does make it, they do that. It's really written so well because it makes us, from Sookie's perspective, understand why she's willing to toy with the idea of a relationship with Bill. Because she did almost die twice. Right? Each episode.
And he's one of the good ones. Yeah.
And he's one of the good ones. Because each episode is one day in her life.
Pretty much.
So this has been like one hell of a 3 days. Right? So he has to be clinging to his humanity. He's like the perfect bad boy because he's not completely.
Right.
He can kill you, but he won't.
Well, and that's such a tricky balance to play as an actor. You want to be cool and scary, but also be true to the character, which has this other mainstream streak in him. And so you're looking for all the help you can get. And you get that with your setting, you get it with the writing, you get it with the costumes. But we're going to be talking with Nathan Barr and Gary Calamar, who are an essential layer to that, which is the music. And that music can help support this story, especially in those complicated moments where you're trying to sell two ideas at the same time.
Boy, they really do. The soundtrack really pulls us towards darker, lighter romance, sex. I noticed in that first fear. Yes, it really. I urge people to watch the episodes again while trying to remember to listen, because it's so brilliantly layered into this tapestry. We're being manipulated and we're not aware of the huge piece that the soundtrack is playing.
So let's learn a little bit more from Nathan and Gary themselves. So, I think we'll start off by saying thank you. This is also helpful for us to have both of you on, because even though you guys had different jobs that you were working on, I think Kristin and I found that we were curious about a lot of the same aspects, as well as what is that collaboration. So thank you for coming together. I think it'll be interesting to hear how you kind of come from separate places and end up creating something together. So
one thing that's so interesting for me, Deb, too, I think, is that we don't really know what other people do, so right, like we're all professionals, so we just show up and do our thing. No one says to like Deb, on the set, so Deb, what's your backstory for today? You just hit your mark and you do your thing.
Yeah. Nathan, so if we start with, like, in your words, what would be your description of your job, your process once you're brought onto a series?
I could just speak to it quick, because what you mentioned is true, and it's pretty funny. So the reason I ended up in the room to interview with Alan and everyone was because they had the editor of the pilot had used my score to a film called Hostel in the pilot, and so I saw the pilot and I was like, wow, this is amazing, but I felt like the score for Hostel was totally wrong for the show.
Okay.
And so I just had like, I'd
have to agree, frankly.
Yeah. You two probably with auditions too. Like it's oftentimes like you have those moments where you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to do, I probably shouldn't do this or say this, but I'm going to do it. And it's what gets you the gig.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for me, like he said, so what did you think of the pilot? I said, I love the pilot, but I think the music you have for me is totally wrong in there. And here's what I would do instead, And so I kind of pitched to him this idea of not needing to be too Southern or regional with the score, and more about the emotional sort of part of it. And then I got the job, and then someone from HBO later said, yeah, we'd never had a composer like actually shoot down their own work during an audition for the for the show before. So it was like one of those funny moments where that worked out. I've certainly had other moments where I've done something similar and then I don't get the show. But,
Right.
but in this case, it was great. So yeah, I create the score for the show, the underscore, separate from the songs, which Gary will talk to you about. And oftentimes people are looking for the score to emotionally support, the characters and define sort of the atmosphere of the show. And so that's kind of why I was brought on board. And I could tell right away it was going to be a special experience because of Alan and his warmth and the way he welcomed us to the show. And yeah. So.
I know. I think we were all like, Alan Ball, HBO. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm in. And you hadn't worked with Alan before, Nate? Before this?
No.
Okay.
No, I never worked with him before. No.
And Gary, you had done 6 Feet Under.
I was very fortunate to work on the great 6 Feet Under, along with my co-supervisor at the time, Thomas Golovich. And I guess I came in and sort of supplied that southern regionality that Nate was referring to with the songs. And it's funny that, after working on 6 Feet Under, which was a little bit more serious, sophisticated, maybe musically, song-wise.
Right.
And I was giving Alan some, fairly serious songs initially, just before we even saw anything, just kind of starting to put some folders together. And Alan said, "Hey Gary, this is a show about vampires. Let's just have some fun with this."
Okay.
And that kind of set the scene. And I think that the songs that we used, had a great mix of menace and regionality and humor and wit. And it's funny. You said you were talking to Jace. My first mission on the show was to replace Jace's song, which was "Tempt In." Alan had found it. Yeah. And the more we listened to it and the more we listened to the alternatives, we just said, this is the song. It's just got the right, mix of, as I said, menace and humor and darkness. And we could not replace it. And we loved it, and everybody at HBO loved it. And we just said, what are we trying to replace this for? It's perfect.
That's so interesting, those words you use: menace, humor, darkness.
I'll just a really quick anecdote. Yeah, Gary's right. Like, Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top is a friend of mine, and so Billy and I wrote a song as a possible option before it was totally decided that this was the song.
Right.
And so we actually wrote a song. It's never seen the light of day. It was a great song, and Alan really loved it. But I think at the end of the day, by that time, everyone was like, "Look, this is great, but Jason's song is like so perfect here."
Oh, that's
we're going to stick with that. So yeah.
Well, that'll have to be in the long lost vaults maybe someday.
Yeah.
Someone will give us permission to play the long lost Nathan Barr theme song for True Blood.
How is it when you play songs, you have to know about them, but then also you both write music and suggest it? And how does that work? Do you feel more like, oh, I hope my song gets in? And how do you feel more uncomfortable suggesting they put your song in?
Well, I am not a songwriter the way Nate is a songwriter. I think I've written maybe 20 songs in my life. I call myself sort of a weekend songwriter. And I have written a couple of great songs, don't get me wrong, but but I'm not a musician, certainly like Nate is. I mean, for me, if we want to talk about the Boot and Rally song, as you know, as the fans know, every episode was named after one of the songs in the episode. So this episode came up. It was a new writer. I don't recall who it was, but she wrote an episode called Boot and Rally, and she did have a song called Boot and Rally. But it was just not right for the show. It was not right for it did not fit the vibe of the show. So we talked about it, and I said, well, we could change the name of the show, of the episode, or we can, write a song called Boot and Rally. And, we can reach out to some songwriters. And, I'm a bit of a songwriter myself. So and actually a little bit of backstory, Iggy Pop had reached out to us, to me, Iggy Pop's people, to say he was a fan of the show, and if ever we could use one of his songs, he'd be wide open to that.
Know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Snoop Dogg wrote a Sookie song. We had a lot of fans in the music
That's
world.
so
Yes,
cool.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
That's a little backstory. So when this thing came up, me and my partner, my music coordinator, James Combs, we said, let's try and write a song called Boot and Rally and see if it flies. And we wrote it, and it turned out pretty good. And we played it for Alan, and we said, and Alan liked it. And I said, well, Iggy has reached out to us. Maybe Iggy will record it. And we reached out to Iggy's people, and he said, sure, I'll be happy to record it. Just,
HBO, yeah.
I mean, I think he liked the song too. It definitely fit into his wheelhouse.
Okay.
Right.
And we threw it together very quickly. He was in Italy. He recorded his part in Italy. We did the backing track here with a producer friend of ours, John Wood, and it all came together. It came together. It almost didn't come together because we had to have it done by a certain time, and there was some payments that had to be made, so yeah, thankfully it came true. It came together, and certainly a feather in my cap to have a song that I co-wrote that Iggy Pop recorded. But
so cool.
But yeah, it was amazing.
And I think fans probably don't understand. It's a pretty quick turnaround for a TV show. It's not like you have like films as much time kind of as you want afterward. We have to get them out there, and sometimes shows will start airing before you're done with the season, so you're really on a timeline. So to that, Nathan, can you share with us a little bit about what your thoughts were artistically going into this score? What is it, Leo? He mentioned putting in that regional flair with the songs, but you were doing sort of a contrast to that. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like, so obviously, I think Alan's biggest concern with the pilot was just like, how do we set up Bill and Sookie to really propel us through the first season? As the central protagonist and love interest, and so like it was really about figuring out what their theme was at the beginning, so I wrote. I think most of the first episode, and then Alan came up to my studio in Topanga, and he had not heard anything yet, and I was super nervous for the same reason you guys have expressed. Just we all really love and are in awe of Alan.
Yes.
And he came in and sat down on the couch, and I played him the piece of music we called Hair Clip, which is where she and Bill are first kissing outside.
Yes.
Lovely.
And I played the cue. And I was like shaking. I was just terrified. And then it ended, and he's like, "Oh my God!" He's like, "It's absolutely perfect." And I was like, that like really set the stage for what was to become such a really lovely, wonderful collaboration. And it was and stumbling on that theme was just like one of those, things like you just sit there, and I had my guitar and just was trying. I tried a million different things, none of which worked. And then all of a sudden my fingers just found this thing that became their theme, and it was really beautiful.
On the cello, were you working on the cello?
And cello too.
Uh-huh.
Cello and guitar.
Cello and guitar, okay.
Alan mentioned that a big piece of the scoring for this was that there was no electronic music, and that also that you have a large collection of sort of older instruments that aren't used as much anymore, and that makes so much sense to me, to actually, for a story about creatures that could be thousands of years old, to use instruments from other periods. Yeah,
absolutely. I have like all sorts of instruments that you don't hear that often, and so True Blood was such a rich palette of characters and creatures, and nothing was off limits, Every weird instrument I have found a corner of the show to exist in at some point, it was
even the one made really, out of human bones, or a human bone.
Yeah, no, I think I got that.
Kristin did her research.
I think I got that after. No, maybe I did. No, I had it. It made it. Yeah, it made it in there with some of the crazy season 2 stuff.
Oh yeah, the main ads,
like some of the orgies and all that, all that stuff.
That bitch who owes me a pair of shoes.
Got the bone instrument.
That's so funny. Yeah, because as a vegan, I love that. I was like, so many instruments are made out of animal and ivory and what have you, and I'm like, finally, there's a lot of human bones we could use.
That's hilarious. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So. So.
From both of you, then, how as you and Alan and Gary and Nate, all of you guys are working together, how do you decide what is score, what is soundtrack, what's a song, and how to sort of transition between those two? Is there a rule of thumb about it, or are you just a feeling about it?
I think it's sometimes pretty clear. I mean, we sit down, we have a spotting session where we sit down with me and Nate and Alan and the writer of the episode and Bruce Dunn, the post-producer, and we would just go through the episode scene by scene by scene. And, by that time, usually the editor would have put in temp music or a temp song or a temp score or some of Nathan's, previously used score. And it's fairly clear, where a song should go and where a score should go. And I mean, sometimes there's discussion, and sometimes there's that question: do we want to put a song here or score? But generally,
but Gary, you must have been so excited though when you saw a show set in Fantasia and Merlotte's, right? Because you knew with two major bars in the show, right? There was going to be a ton of music,
right? Yes, absolutely.
For you to pick.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, and I had never thought of that. That's what I'm saying. I have no idea how this show is made.
And a lot of times,
fantastic. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And a lot of times in the script, there will be, as Nate said, there'll be a scene at Merlotte's, and we had a live band play. We had C.C. Adcock and his band play in one of the Merlotte scenes, some live music. So yeah, it and fortunately Alan loves to use a lot of songs, in all the shows, in 6 Feet Under, in True Blood, and Nate and I both worked on a show called Here and Now and Uncle Frank, and Alan loves to use a lot of songs and a lot of music, so that's great for me as a music supervisor, and challenging sometimes,
right?
But he's the perfect guy to work with, as a music supervisor.
Yeah.
Also, another great thing that we had the opportunity to do was to record new songs for the show. Beck wrote a song for us. Nick Cave did a cover song for us. Lucinda Williams and Elvis Costello recorded a song together. So that is a lot of fun for me as a music supervisor, and also just makes it nice and fresh for the audience, and for a soundtrack. Our soundtrack, we had 3 soundtracks that all were Grammy nominated. And, a lot of it is because we had, new, fresh songs that were not, on 2 other soundtracks, or, it was, exclusive to our show.
Oh, that's
and it's also like, that's so exciting when you have a show like True Blood, like before Game of Thrones, there was True Blood,
Yes.
And it's like it was for you too as well. Like, it was just like, so what an incredible experience to be a part of a show that became part of the cultural phenomenon. Like, it's so fast, right? Like, I think like within like 3 episodes, I feel like I was hearing about people at pop-up parties all over, like meeting up to watch the episode. And it's so cool to be a part of something like that.
Yeah.
Production and post-production, right? There's no real communication. Like, we don't get to meet you all maybe at the premiere quickly. And Gary, I think will agree, like we have these intense, like, relationships with all the characters in the show where we're writing and we come up with these themes, and then we meet the people and they're like, okay, yeah, you're the composer. And I'm like, I've literally been watching you like for 1,000 hours. Right. And it's this like total disconnect, which is obvious. Like, they don't know me, but it is funny.
That's so true, right? Because like, I kind of feel like I know Brad Pitt a little bit just from going to the theater every other year. So I can only imagine. And then, we would see you at these massive events where we're nervous, we're fried, we've just met 600 people, and and then we see you and go hi, and then it's 2 seconds later we swept along. It's so funny.
But it is amazing, the idea that you have this strong emotional relationship to an image on the screen.
Yes.
Totally. That is in some way, you have spent more time. You've spent possibly more time with Jessica Hamby than I have.
Right. It's funny. It's funny. Yeah. It's
and
true.
in an intense way as well. It's not, not just casual viewing. You're really trying to feel something out. So that's a really remarkable relationship.
That is so interesting.
Nate, for you, as you're writing music, were there, when you saw something in a script that particularly excited you, themes that you were excited to make, like, again, fight scenes versus love scenes versus, what sort of stretched you maybe, or you got excited about?
I mean, I never read the scripts. Because for me, I want to experience the show as a fan. So the first time I would ever see the show or know what was happening was when we spotted. And that way I could enjoy it as a fan and then sort of approach it as a composer. And it just, I don't know, it just felt like I wanted to be a little bit of a fanboy about the music.
I love that.
Yeah, which is cool.
That's cool.
And so, I think just anytime, obviously as a film composer, TV composer, what I do is very much background music. So most people won't notice it. They would definitely notice the scene in a different way if the music wasn't there. But, so it really, those moments in the show where the score was really featured, those are the moments as a composer you really look for, that you get excited about, because the score pops its head up for a minute and becomes a really right there in the scene in everyone's face, and that's where it's cool.
What might make a moment like that happen? What are you seeing that would cause
definitely Sookie running dressed in white, in season 1, I think, to Bill, right?
Yep.
Isn't it? Was that what it was? Yeah.
She got dressed in her beautiful flowing Gothic nightie and ran across the graveyard.
Exactly. So that for example is a moment where the score, when you're watching Spotting, I was excited. I'm like, oh, that's going to be awesome to write that. And then there's a lot of droney dark stuff under dialogue, which is also fun to write and nip and tuck around the dialogue, but it's you just know that it's really not going to get noticed. Funnily enough, one of the themes I wrote that gets the most little fan mail here and there was for Lafayette and Jesus. It's this little 4 or 8 bar guitar thing, and I just every year I'll get a couple emails from people saying, oh my god, I love this, where can I find this? And I need to upload it at some point because it's not on the soundtrack, but it's so nice to I never, when I wrote that, thought it was anything. It was just I had no time and I just did it. And it's so nice to see that it's moving some people, these years later. It's
Isn't
really
that nice?
Lovely.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. That's why we were so excited to do this podcast and highlight what you do and all the people that made the show so special and get new viewers. Because it was quite something, that the talented people that came together. It's staggering, the talent that put this thing together.
It is. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And that does, for some reason, bridge me to, I don't know how else to say this. Let's talk about your organ, Nathan. I literally don't know how else to say that.
Sounds like a line from True Blood.
I know. I'm so self-conscious of talking about it in that. So I always say pipe organ.
Pipe organ. I know, because I know there's 1,366 pipes.
It's not that much better, Nate.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
I know, yeah,
Let's talk about my pipe organ. True, that is not better.
It's not that much better.
And the whole studio is literally built around the pipe organ. And the smallest pipe is that big. And the biggest one is 16 feet long and 12 feet high.
My goodness.
And it's really, so we do silent film concerts there. I use it in everything. I sneak it in anywhere I can because, I mean, even in Uncle Frank, actually, I told Alan, I'd love to use the pipe organ. And I think the minute someone hears pipe organ, they really think of Phantom of the Opera kind of thing,
right.
which I hate.
Right.
And so I did use it in a very a-traditional way, and Alan loved it. He was so excited about it in the score. So yeah. So
but you can get a diverse sound out of an organ. It doesn't just have to sound like church. It can
it has a lot of percussion. It has bells and drums and marimbas and so it's cool. Yeah.
Speaking of that, do either of you like musicals?
I like musicals.
Yeah, I like musicals.
But actually, no, I don't think I'm a big fan of music. I'm a small fan of musicals.
Small fan of musicals.
I'm a small fan of musicals.
Actually, Nate, speaking of controversial subjks, wasn't there some talk about a True Blood musical?
Oh, yes. Can you spill the tea on that?
Yeah, there was. As a matter of fact, Alan came to New York and saw a version of it, which he really loved. This is a couple years ago now. Lisbeth Scott, who's a collaborator of mine, we worked on it for a couple of years, and then the pandemic hit. We had just had a table read. everything shut down.
Right.
So truthfully, things are a bit up in the air right now with that.
Yeah.
Because I think Steven was interested. I mean, of course, he's a musical guy. I saw him in
he can sing,
Chicago at the Hollywood Bowl.
Sound of Music on TV.
He sang. He sang one of the early demos actually. That
yeah, good.
That I then showed to Alan and he was excited about the idea of taking a stab at it. It's musical theater is like one of the trickiest, in my opinion, genres. It's a really difficult nut to crack as far as story and song and everything. So we have a couple different versions that we explored, and we were continuing on our way when everything kind of fell apart with the world. So.
You've both mentioned multiple times the Bill and Sookie romance as kind of the heart of this, and moments that you got to really express your talent in. And were there words that went with that? Because I love this menace, humor, darkness. Did you just feel it when you were sensing the music that would go with it? Or were you also thinking of themes? Because you mentioned the word theme, but were there words that went with it?
No, there weren't. It was just instrumental. Yeah, just instrumental. The only time
But I mean, in your own head to create, were you thinking immortal, timeless?
No, I was just like thinking, wow, I really want to and do, relate to what these two people are experiencing.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, and then just going for that with the music. Like, how do we accentuate that even more and make the connection even stronger than it already is?
Yes.
Between these two.
And, getting back to Jace's song, his song was the template for all the music that I picked, throughout. Like I say, it just had that right mix of those, categories there. And that just opened the door for me. When that got picked as the song, then I kind of knew, a good direction to go in for the rest of the series.
Oh, interesting. So it was more than just the title song. It was it set the bar.
It did set the bar for me.
Well, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. We're so excited to talk to you, especially at the beginning, because we hope now as people continue to rewatch, they'll pay more attention to when score comes through and when certain songs
I'm looking forward to rewatching myself. I'm going to get right back into it.
Yeah. Oh my! You guys are you are both like so extraordinary. like it's really. Oh my God! Are you kidding?
All right. Well, thank you so much.
So good to see you.
Thank you.
Again,
that was so fun.
Oh, so much fun. I love finding out all those little details about how they do what they do, what their process is. That when Nathan said he didn't read the scripts, he just watched it as a fan. That's so
and that he
unique.
Played everything
originally for every episode. Incredible.
And Gary telling us his inspiration for the songs that he picked and how every episode is named after a song and they found that song. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Just I'm learning so much as
and
we
where
do this
the
process.
human yes, me too. And the human bone instrument when that was played.
But we've got next week, we'll be digging into some more of the visuals, moving beyond the audio. And we're going to be talking to Suzuki Ingerslev, who is the production designer for True Blood. So all of the sets that you see, the way that they are dressed, so excited to speak with her.
Yeah.
It'll also be the first time we visit a little place called Fantasia.
That sounds familiar. And
Doesn't it?
Might be the first episode that maybe the Tall Sweet is in. And maybe
perhaps
maybe me.
Maybe Pam.
Maybe
fan
Pam.
favorite Pam.
Aww.
So we'll go deep into your first day on set.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to talk about it.
Oh gosh, that was a day. Oh my gosh. I we could do the whole episode on that, but we'll talk
Well, anyways, yes, that is for next week.
Yes.
So thanks for listening, Trubies. Subscribe and follow wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll see you next week on Truest Blood.
Y'all come back now, you hear.
Truest Blood is produced by Safe Haven for HBO Max. Executive producers are Janina Gavankar, Kristen Bauer, and Deborah Ann Wool. Our producer is Gabrielle Gallon, and our audio producer is Christopher Wool. Our theme song was recorded just for this podcast by Jace Everett. Additional music was composed by Timo Chen. And remember, you can watch all of the original episodes of True Blood on HBO Max.